In recent days, we've seen several newspapers taking a stand against John Elkann's statements, and the Spanish press has renewed its attack on Ferrari. In today's video, we're going to see what they've said. We also need to talk about Chandhok and Jenson who have weighed in on the situation at Maranello. And finally, we need to discuss one of the day's most important news items, namely the industrial espionage suffered by Alpine, as well as Montoya's statements about Max Verstappen's championship. Before we begin, if you like the videos on the channel, please give us a supporting like. And now, let's get started right away. This time the target isn't so much the car, but the pair of drivers. According to several Iberian journalists, the real cause of Maranello's problems would be the Hamilton-Leclerc duo. The accusations come straight from Madrid, particularly from the newspaper Marca, with Carlos Miquel's signature, someone who has never spared criticism of the prancing horse. The article is clear. All the world champions who joined Ferrari, from Alonso to Vettel to Hamilton, haven't been able to win anymore. A heavy phrase that sounds almost like a curse. Whoever joins Maranello stops triumphing. But it doesn't end here. Miquel doubles down, describing the SF25 as a disastrous car and pointing out that the Hamilton-Leclerc combination isn't working. The reason? According to the Spanish press, the 7-time world champion doesn't have the same sensitivity as Carlos Sainz in developing and fine-tuning the car. And this is supposedly also slowing down Leclerc's work. Basically, without Sainz, they say Ferrari would have lost its technical reference point. And here's the real low blow. If Elkann is looking for a driver who doesn't complain and focuses only on driving, Sainz is perfect. A very clear message directed at Ferrari's president, almost a provocation. You've sent away the only one who had found the right balance with Leclerc. It's no secret that the internal situation at Maranello has become increasingly tense after Elkann's public statements, which urge drivers to talk less and drive more. And now, between the president's words and the attacks from the foreign press, Ferrari finds itself in the middle of a media storm that doesn't help the work on the track at all. And let's be clear, when a team like Ferrari comes under fire not only for the car, but also for its pair of drivers, it means something has truly cracked. Hamilton carries a huge name, a history of success, and in my opinion, the truth isn't so much in the pair of drivers, who are instead criticized by the Spanish press, but more in the internal situation at Maranello and the car's development. Spain, which has an evident bond with Sainz, continues to prod the prancing horse. The Leclerc-Sainz pairing was working and shouldn't have been touched. These are their statements. It's hard to imagine Carlos Sainz returning to Maranello, as Miquel himself admits, but the message remains strong. Maybe Ferrari chose the wrong man at the wrong time. It's important, from my point of view, to analyze all perspectives to understand what the situation is abroad as well, and how Ferrari is perceived. And in Spain, the blame is placed on the pair of drivers, so not so much on John Elkann's statements, but more on Hamilton instead of Sainz. In my opinion, it's madness, in the sense that criticizing a 7-time world champion makes absolutely no sense, and Marca has always been against Ferrari because they think the prancing horse has sidelined Carlos Sainz, which isn't true. In fact, in my opinion, Carlos Sainz was praised even more than he earned on the track, especially in Binotto's time. He was considered almost better than Leclerc. And Carlos has many qualities. He's a great driver, but he can't be compared to Lewis Hamilton. Chandhok identified the real problem, making statements that I agree with. In fact, the former Formula 1 driver, now a technical commentator, doesn't beat around the bush. For him, the truth is simple. Ferrari doesn't win because the SF25 isn't fast enough, period. It's not about the drivers, it's not about the talk. If the car were at McLaren's level, Chandhok argues Charles and Lewis would have been in full contention for the championship. And indeed, the numbers confirm it. In 2025, Ferrari hasn't won a single Grand Prix yet, with Leclerc at 7 podiums and Hamilton at 0. The two occupy 5th and 6th positions in the standings, separated by 92 points, while Red Bull has managed to seize 3rd place in the Constructors' Championship, leaving Ferrari chasing. At this moment, they find themselves in 4th place. In short, the results speak clearly. The team's potential hasn't translated into actual speed on the track. Everything exploded after the unfortunate, but telling comparison John Elkann made between Formula 1 and the WEC. In Milan, in front of journalists, he recalled how Ferrari had just won the World Endurance Championship, 74 points ahead of Toyota, and the driver's title was claimed by Giovinazzi, Pierre Guidi, and Calado. And then the jab. In Formula 1, we have exceptional mechanics at pit stops and engineers who work hard, but the rest isn't up to par. And finally, the phrase that ignited everything. Drivers need to talk less and focus on driving. Translated. The problem isn't just technical, but also about attitude. It's just that from that moment, several insiders began to wonder if the Ferrari president was looking for a scapegoat. Chandhok was the first to respond clearly. If the car were like McLaren's, Hamilton and Leclerc would be vying for the title. A phrase that perfectly captures the situation. Ferrari doesn't lack talent, it lacks pure performance. And according to Chandhok, the rest not being up to par, as cited by Elkann, doesn't make sense if the base of the problem is the car's speed. But he's not the only one who responded with sarcasm. Jenson also commented on Elkann's statement on social media, writing, "Maybe John should lead by example. A low blow, but it reflects the thoughts of many in the paddock. It's too easy to ask for silence from the drivers when the management itself doesn't seem to have a clear plan to become competitive again." The general feeling is that John Elkann wanted to send an internal message of discipline and unity, citing the example of the WEC when Ferrari is united and wins. And certainly a united and winning Ferrari is needed. But the difference in the World Endurance Championship is that the car was simply stronger than the competition. In Formula 1, no, and if the foundation is not solid, no team unity can be enough. Today, Chandhok's point remains the clearest. The SF25 is not fast enough. And until this changes, Leclerc and Hamilton can only defend themselves. Whether they talk little or a lot, it won't change anything. And let's hear why the whole audience is on Jenson Button's side. Indeed, comments have multiplied on social media. Great Jenson is right. How can a president speak about his drivers like that in front of the media? He should be the one to lead by example. The public has almost entirely sided with Jenson Button, and the reason is clear. After years of unfulfilled promises, Ferrari continues to lose, and many fans are tired of hearing proclamations from above instead of seeing results on the track. Reality is harsh. Ferrari hasn't won a world title since 2008, when they achieved the Constructors' Triumph with Raikkonen and Massa. And if we talk about drivers, we have to go back to 2007, also with Kimi Raikkonen. Since then, a series of changes in direction, presidents, team principals, and now a new Hamilton-Leclerc pair that was supposed to be the symbol of rebirth, but today seems just another postponed promise. After Brazil, Ferrari has even dropped to 4th place in the Constructors, surpassed by Red Bull. And the truth is that behind Elkann's words lies a growing tension. A frustrated president, 2 drivers under pressure, and an environment that hasn't found stability for too long. And how can you face 2026 with such a tense climate in Maranello? Jenson Button, with one sentence, hit the mark. Lead by example. It's the perfect summary of the Ferrari crisis. Too much communication from above, too little clarity on the field. And maybe what is needed is a man with a lot of experience. One who has won a lot in Formula 1, 4 world titles with Red Bull, and also had his adventure in Ferrari. Fought for the title in 2017 and 2018. I'm obviously talking about Sebastian Vettel, who said that at the moment he is fine as he is. However, he loves this sport to death, and after retirement at first, I thought I would have to step away somehow. But in the end, I continue to watch the races because his love for racing is great. And besides, he knows many guys in the paddock. And the former Ferrari driver added, "If one day the right opportunity, position, or perspective should present itself, I might consider it." We saw several contacts with Lewis Hamilton in Brazil, where both Sebastian Vettel and Lewis Hamilton were present. So Ferrari should not rule out having an external mentor like Sebastian Vettel. It would only do good for Ferrari. Also, because Vettel is currently very close to Lewis Hamilton. We can say they are almost friends after the German driver's retirement. The two have become very close, and so before asking the drivers for silence, clear direction from those in command is needed. And perhaps Sebastian Vettel himself could help Ferrari with this. Because if Ferrari wants to return to winning, the example must come from Maranello, not from the wheel. We also know that Lewis Hamilton will stay with Ferrari at least until 2027. In fact, his contract is long-term. Andrew Benson from the BBC confirmed it. And behind the scenes in the paddock, there was talk of months of a 2+1 contract. So 2 official years plus the option to renew for another year. The 2 years we are talking about are 2025 and 2026, with an option to continue in 2027. But as of today, it seems Hamilton wants to do 3 years with Ferrari, so from 2025 to the end of 2027. This situation in Maranello needs to be resolved as soon as possible, because Hamilton won't be leaving the Scuderia anytime soon, and John Elkann seems to have made Lewis Hamilton a scapegoat. So the two need to clarify things. Sebastian Vettel's help may be needed by Ferrari, and the Englishman knows that 2025 is just an intermediate stage, and that the real challenge will come in 2026. But a more relaxed atmosphere is needed in Maranello before next year, otherwise new problems will arise, more concerning team management. And as Chandhok says, it is essential to develop a car that is up to the competitors, because in the end, that's what counts. And Ferrari hasn't had a competitive car for too many years now. But let's look at the espionage that Alpine suffered. There was a busy night in Viry-Châtillon, in the heart of the Alpine Formula 1 engine department. Someone entered. It's not just any theft, but a suspicious intrusion that has already triggered an investigation for possible industrial espionage. According to Le Parisien, it all happened around 10 p.m. on Monday evening, when 2 people broke into the team's headquarters south of Paris. A calculated move. The two forced a glass door in the entrance corridor, went up to the upper floor, and reached the offices of Alpine's executives and technicians. not just any place. That's where the French team's Formula 1 engines are developed. The first information speaks of a blitz lasting no more than 5 minutes. The doors of several offices were found forced open, indicating that the intruders knew where to go. Yet, when security intervened, nothing was missing. No computers stolen, no documents taken, no trace of theft. Just visited offices, broken doors, and a huge question mark. An internal source stated, "Nothing was stolen, everything is fine. There were no employees at that time." And then the question is inevitable. Why break into a Formula 1 factory without taking anything? The French police have no doubts. The incident warrants a thorough investigation. Experts from the technical and scientific police arrived on the scene, conducting surveys and collecting biological traces and fingerprints. The case was in the hands of the Division of Territorial Crime, which is trying to determine if there was an attempt at industrial espionage behind the intrusion. And for now, no arrests, no leads excluded. But suspicion grows. Anyone familiar with the world of Formula 1 knows that technical information is pure gold. A single file, a prototype, a drawing of an aerodynamic component, or a detail on new engines can be worth millions. And Alpine is currently working on highly sensitive projects related to 2026, when the regulations will change, and every manufacturer will try to gain an advantage. We know that Alpine will change its engine supplier from Renault to Mercedes. So it might be someone interested in learning more about Mercedes power units, which are considered superior to all others for 2026. In fact, Mercedes itself is considered to have an advantage in engines over all other manufacturers. So we might think of a rival to Mercedes. It is the beating heart of the Renault engine. Here, the power units that end up on Alpine single-seaters are designed, tested, and fine-tuned. However, there might be some information about Mercedes engines, a technical center with a very high level of confidentiality, monitored and protected by advanced security systems. For this reason, the intrusion raised a high alarm even at the top of the Renault group. For now, the team maintains the utmost discretion, only confirming that personnel safety was never compromised, but concern within the team is growing. If someone managed to enter so easily, how truly protected is the technology of a Formula 1 team today? And the real question we have to ask is, what were the thieves who entered Alpine looking for? Especially concerning Renault's engine division. We know that Renault will stop supplying engines to Formula 1 at the end of 2025, with Alpine being the only team using Renault engines. And from next year, Alpine will use Mercedes engines. So what is the reason to sneak into an engine supplier when it will leave Formula 1? You can understand there isn't a real logical choice. Perhaps they want to gather more aerodynamic information. Or do they want to look for information on the Mercedes engines that Alpine will use next year? We know that Mercedes itself is very secure from this point of view, and perhaps Alpine is more accessible. So the thieves decided to try to intervene on Alpine rather than Mercedes. However, these remain only hypotheses. We'll see what the forensic experts come up with. And be aware, Michael Schumacher's historic manager, Willy Weber, spoke out about Verstappen. Max Verstappen is only 28 years old, but his career is already the stuff of legend. Records, victories, impossible overtakes, and a mentality that seems to know no pause. In Brazil, starting from the pit lane, he managed to climb up to the podium, becoming only the 8th driver in Formula 1 history to do so. And on the Interlagos circuit, the land of Senna, he was acclaimed as magic. But for those who know him well, Verstappen resembles Michael Schumacher much more. And it's not a fan saying this, but Willy Weber, the historic manager of the Kaiser, the man who accompanied Schumacher from the Jordan days to Ferrari dominance. In an interview with Formula 1 Insider, Weber explained that there are deep similarities between Michael and Max that go beyond driving. Both sacrificed 100% for their success. They dedicated every minute of their lives to Formula 1. They are not glamorous types. They don't seek covers. They are not actors. They are athletes, not Hollywood stars. These are strong words that perfectly hit the mark. Like Schumacher, Verstappen also lives to race. He doesn't care about being liked, doesn't care about appearing. He just wants to be the fastest. But Weber doesn't stop at the similarities. Knowing Schumacher closely, he also highlights the main difference between the two. Max is more instinctive, decides with his heart, and is almost always right. Michael, on the other hand, was more calculating. Every maneuver, every choice was meticulously calculated. Two different ways of interpreting greatness. Schumacher was the architect, the man who built victories with discipline and control. Verstappen is the artist, pure instinct, natural speed. The ability to understand the car as if it were an extension of his body. Although I believe Verstappen is also an architect, he studies the car a lot, studies the setup a lot, understands at every moment how his Red Bull reacts, and can explain to you in detail why it's not going fast at that moment. He manages to know the track conditions before everyone else and what his driving setup lacks. And perhaps it is precisely here that Verstappen finds the key to his dominance. Because in 2025, despite a difficult championship and a now reduced advantage, he has shown he can react like a true champion. The comeback at Interlagos was not only technical, but also mental. The proof is that the fire inside has not gone out. Today, Verstappen represents the same dedication that Schumacher had made a symbol of his name, living every day to win, not to appear, being a pure athlete, not a celebrity. In a world where Formula 1 is all about spectacle, social media and image, this is what makes him stand out. Is Max like Schumacher then? Maybe not. They are two eras, two styles, two different personalities, but the mentality is the same. A hunger that never fades. And if Schumacher built the Ferrari legend, Verstappen today is writing his with Red Bull. Two different destinies, but a common trait. Total dedication to victory. And according to Montoya, Max Verstappen is the people's champion. In fact, he might not win the title this year, but for everyone, he remains the true champion because he has gone beyond the limits of the car. Unlike McLaren, with both drivers who have thrown away many opportunities. First Norris at the beginning of the season, also in the middle part, then Piastri in the last races. Both McLaren drivers have not been imperfect, but despite that, one of them will go on to win the championship. On the contrary, the one who on paper deserves it more will most likely not win it, but will remain the people's champion. In fact, in Sao Paulo, Max Verstappen gave yet another demonstration of pure talent, climbing from the back to the podium starting from the pit lane. Another gladiator race, as if he never wants to give up. Yet mathematics does not forgive. The World Championship dream is practically gone. While Lando Norris continues to win and race like a robot, Verstappen finds himself forced to chase, aware that even the slightest mistake is no longer allowed. After the Brazilian race, he publicly admitted that the championship is lost, explaining that they did not throw it away now, but months ago, between Melbourne and Zandvoort, in his own words. And thinking the same way is Juan Pablo Montoya, who did not mince words. In an interview, the former Colombian driver said clearly, "I do not rule out Piastri yet, but for Max, the race for the title is over. The gap is too big, and it is not realistic to think that both McLarens will finish outside the next 3 Grand Prix. In short, for Montoya, the 2025 championship is already written. But there's more. The former Williams and McLaren driver wanted to explain why, despite everything, Verstappen remains the symbol of modern Formula 1. Montoya called Max the people's champion. He is the bad guy who does not let anyone walk all over him. That's why fans identify with him. A perfect definition, Verstappen is the anti-hero of Formula 1. Direct, impulsive, often rough, but always sincere. In a time that talks so much about political image, he remains the one who says what he thinks and does what he feels. However, Montoya did not stop here. In Brazil, the virtual safety car helped him, but it is not enough. He is great at overtaking. It is his best skill. But in the end, Lando Norris is beating him. And we cannot give all the credit to McLaren because Max also won his world championships with the best car. It is a difficult truth for Verstappen fans to accept. When you dominate, you are the benchmark. When you chase, you are the one who has lost the technical advantage. And today, paradoxically, it is Max who finds himself in a position of having to chase. Meanwhile, Lando Norris seems like the new Vettel of 2011. Calm, surgical, almost relentless. A perfect McLaren, a united team, and a driver who rarely makes mistakes. Obviously, this is in the last races. Verstappen, on the other hand, continues to bring out the best, but with Red Bull no longer as dominant as before, and in some weekends not even enough to compete for victory. Montoya touched on a true point. The moral title, the one from the fans, Max has already won, because even in a complicated year, he continued to entertain, to fight, and to remind everyone that you do not need to be likable to be great. You just need to be authentic. The problem is that in a few weeks, someone else might be lifting the trophy, and for someone like Verstappen, this burns more than any defeat. Let me know in the comments your opinion on all the topics we discussed in the video. As always, I remind you to leave a like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any videos. That's all from here. See you in the next video.